Hey everybody, John Miller here, again with another commentary video, sporting my coronavirus quarantine beard. I think the last time I actually shaved was during this race weekend at Circuit of the Americas, the GT4 SRO America season opener, the only race we've had so far, probably the only race we're going to have for a little while. So I want to put up a video here showing the race start from race one, where unfortunately I'm starting P9 overall, P4 in class. I probably should have been on the front row of this race based on our qualifying times, but I got my qualifying times, most of them actually taken away for track limits violations. It was a bit of a wet session, so a lot of cars were going off track. Some cars got penalized. I was one of them. So here we are, starting ninth. Trying to get heat in the tires here, trying to anticipate the green. It's kind of a late green. The field's really bunched up, and finally the green flag comes out. I get a good jump to the inside on the two cars here on the row ahead of me. A little conservative. I don't go over the white line there on pit lane exit, but I still make up 2 spots there right away. And then I've got this Flying Lizard Aston Martin to my right there. I decided to try and hang it around the outside on him, run nice and wide, because I know that by the time we get up here to the S's, it's got to be single file. So we slot in. Things have calmed down a little bit at this point. But now I'm looking to the inside. I've actually made this pass work before, but the Aston really shut the door on me there. Took the line away. So I knew that everyone was really still trying to put heat in the tires, myself included. So for me, getting a good run out of turn 11, this next hairpin, is going to be big. And so I'm checking my mirror, and I can already see that dark Aston Martin is making a late lunge. If you look at my mirror down there in my window, he's side by side with me. I left him room at the apex, put the power down, still pretty well coming off the corner. He's still side by side with that other Aston. We both have a good run on this orange and black Aston in front of me. I get around him on the outside, and the other Aston is now looking to make a move. I'm watching the other Aston as I go to the brake pedal. Still a little early, and I see that the other Aston's not going to make the corner. So I delay my turn in, watch him go sailing through. Thankfully, he didn't take out the Audi in front of me there and cause a big mess. And what that also did was it calmed things down behind me pretty nicely, because a bunch of the cars checked up and avoided that incident as well. So now I've got a little bit of breathing room behind me, and I can focus forward on this GMG Audi R8 being driven by Alex Welch. So watching him enter the carousel, he's got pretty good speed there, but I'm watching him pick up a pretty big understeer at that point. So noticing that he's probably struggling, but I get a big wiggle here. As you can see, big correction with my hands. Everyone's still trying to put heat in these Pirelli tires. So it's back off, get a good run, and try and be nice to the tires, but also take advantage. I'm up to P5. I've made up 4 spots on the opening lap. And now it's put my head down and try and get back to the front, because like I said, I know we've got pace based on qualifying, and I want to get as many positions as I can early in the race to hand over to my co-driver, Samantha Tan, so she has less work to do towards the end of the race. Now, one of the other reasons I like to get heat in my tires pretty early is that I like to use the curbs and be aggressive as possible in the M4 here. Generally, the more curbs you can use, the earlier, the faster you can be. And as you can see, I've sucked up onto the back of the GMG Audi here. And I start to make a little look to the inside here, but there's actually some debris on the road, and I didn't see it until I hit it right there. So immediately I kind of backed off and went into recovery mode or diagnostic mode, and looking down at the dashboard, make sure I didn't pop a radiator or not losing pressure, no alarms on the dashboard. And then for the next couple corners, it's about kind of feeling out the tires. I'm not going to back off too much. So I'm still showing in the nose, still staying close, but I also don't want to pick up a cut tire. So I want to make sure that if I do have a problem, I can identify it in the next few corners and dive to pit lane. But everything's feeling pretty good. So I'm going to keep pushing on the Audi here, trying to find my way by, because those 3 cars in front of the Audi are the top 3 overall. This is one of the corners where we tend to struggle just because of the long duration. The Audi got a bit of understeer there, and he went to the brakes pretty late, kind of missed his mark there, which again allowed me to close up. So putting the power down, really trying to get a handle on this Pirelli tire still. 2:17.7 first race lap. Felt like the pace was pretty good, so I knew we had the pace to run at the front. But again, it's new tire construction, new tire compound for 2020 on the GT4 cars. And we're still trying to see how hard we can push them, what we can do setup-wise to get the most out of the Pirelli. It's certainly a faster tire, but absolutely still learning the process here. So using a lot of curb in the first few corners. I see that he's a little bit out of sequence, and so I do the undercut there, get side by side with him. He leaves me some room. And again, this is where I wish we could run kind of third gear, or run it, we had a slightly different gearing. But I hold him out to the outside there, into the dirty part of the track, and make the pass stick. But like I said, that section through there, I run fourth gear. We tried running third. Third's a little high, fourth is a little low. Some of the gearing selections for this car at this track just don't quite match up perfectly, and that's part of why we struggle towards the end of the stint, I think, as well. We tend to be a little bit harder on our tires just inherently. That's how the car is designed. We're a little bit nose heavy. We're a little bit overall heavy. And so our advantage is that we've got pace early, although this weekend the Astons and the Porsches had tons of pace early and they had tons of pace late. So it's always a bit of a balance, trying to make sure we're fast at the start and fast at the end. Ideally, I qualify a little bit further up, so I don't have to push quite as hard this early, making up positions so that there's some tire left towards the end of the stint for my co-driver. But at this point, it's just about head down and make up positions, get to the front. Because now I'm chasing down the Andretti Autosport McLaren 570 GT4, being driven by Colin Mullen. And Colin and I have had a few good scraps before. He's always raced me really clean, really hard. Colin's quick. And so we've raced at Sonoma side by side for a couple laps, and then at the last race of the year at Las Vegas last year, Colin and I had a really good race. Now this is starting. This next lap is the fastest lap of the race for me. But as I said, last year at the last race of the season in Las Vegas, I came out of the pits, and effectively I knew that we were going to be battling for the overall win, and Colin was already on track up to speed behind me coming through turn 1. And the previous day we'd had some issues with our brakes, and so the braking performance was suffering, so I was having to brake a little early. Now the team obviously fixed it for the last race, and we were up to speed, we were good to go, but I was on my out lap, and my braking reference for the first big brake zone was still kind of attached to the prior day's braking performance. So kind of mentally, I didn't know quite how deep I could brake, and with Colin right on my tail coming out of pit lane, I braked pretty hard at what I thought was a good spot, and I had gone defensive, and I quickly realized that I had screwed up. I had braked way too early because the car stopped incredibly well, much better than it had been the previous day, and I hadn't gone defensive enough to close the door for Colin, and so he threw a pass on me. And we ran side by side for a couple corners, tried to get it back, but ultimately a caution came out soon afterwards, and he had already taken the position. And then we ended up finishing 1-2 overall. Colin won, and myself and my co-driver Harry Gottsacker finished second. Thankfully, we had already clinched the championship at that point, but I beat myself up about that move, not being defensive enough and not braking late enough. I beat myself about that for longer than normal, and so I was using that as motivation to kind of chase Colin down here and return the favor. And you can see I actually had to touch the brake pedal pretty aggressively there in the carousel. Now just trying to chase him down. Again, this was my fast lap of the race. It's a 2:17.3, which Ended up being the fastest race lap for any BMW all weekend for either race. So that was a nice, satisfying accomplishment for us as a team as well, to get that fast lap from the BMW squad. So speeding it up here, I think the M4 sounds pretty good, sped up to 200%, kind of sounds like an F1 car. So I'm watching Colin struggle a little bit with the front end, and I'm trying to find where I'm going to make my move. I've driven the McLaren GT4 a couple times, and so I do understand kind of its strengths and weaknesses and how it makes lap time. And as I get closer, I don't know if Colin was just watching his mirror or really struggling with the setup or his tires. My guess is a little bit of both. But I'm watching him miss his apex a couple places and struggle with the front end, carry a lot of trail brake. His brake lights were on a lot deeper into the corner than mine tended to be. And so I was just sizing him up, trying to figure out, okay, I've gotten pretty close. I'm still not there yet, but where am I going to be able to make this move? And I'm watching him tap the brake pedal multiple times there in the carousel to try and get the front end of that McLaren to point. And then right here, he brakes pretty late, and I almost braked too late there as well. We both missed the apex, but he missed it big time. And so for me, this allowed me to suck up to him there and show him the nose, put the power down early, and just get in line here, take my run, stay in the draft. And I had sensed that he was probably not going to fight me too hard, but I didn't want to pop until I was absolutely sure I had the run made and could brake late enough to get the pass done. And so that was the pass for P2 in the silver class, P3 overall. So now I just got to put my head down and run clean, consistent laps, which is really the name of the game in any race. So I was able to bang out 217 after 217 for 3 or 4 laps in a row here. And so that was really satisfying to get in a groove and make up some ground on the leaders to try and get to the front. So I also knew that I was going to try and pass a KTM for P1 in class. Nikolai Elgahanian in the KTM GT4 ahead of me was the next car for position in my class. And they make their lap time very differently than the M4 does. And you're about to see a pretty good example of the differences in GT4 cars and some of the challenges that the series has to correctly BOP cars like this that make their lap times very differently. So you can see coming out on the straightaway here, I've got a pretty good run, and I'm just trying to stay in the draft as long as possible, again, because the rule states now that once I make a move, he can't move in reaction. So I've got the run, I go to the brake pedal as late as I can, but there's the there's the advantage of a very lightweight KTM versus a pretty heavyweight BMW M4. And watch through this section here. Watch my hands. I'm struggling. I'm getting oversteer there, trying to put the power down, and he just scoots away. Again, through this section, watching him just kind of place his car where he wants to, put the power down, and he's going to put about 5 car lengths or more of distance on me, probably more, through the carousel here. He just extends that gap. Obviously, the KTM very strong through the mid-speed and high-speed sections. But I've noticed he's not using as much curb, and I noticed that with this car last year too. A lot of times the KTMs and even the Ginettas, I pick up a big understeer there. I'll talk about that in a second, but to finish my thought about some of these lighter weight GT4 cars, I noticed that sometimes they don't use as much curb as we're able to, and so they may be a little bit more fragile than we are. Granted, like I was saying earlier, being able to use the curb is an advantage, but sometimes these lightweight cars don't use the curbs as much. I don't know if it upsets them or if they're just not as, if they're a little bit more fragile than we are. But like I said, starting this lap, I started to realize that I picked up a big understeer coming onto the front straightaway, and so now it was apparent to me that the tires had just taken their second step down in terms of performance and life being taken out of them. I was well over halfway into my stint at this point, approaching the 25 minute mark in the stint, and my plan was to run to about the 33-minute mark, kind of as late as I could in the pit window. So now I've caught the KTM, and the previous lap I knew that I wasn't quite as close coming out of 11, and I still had a good run. So now the question is how far defensive was he going to go on me? Because I knew I was going to have a run here. So if he went defensive, I was going to have to either really shove it to the inside or go around the outside. And so he didn't move there to go take the inside line away, so I just popped and went for it. So that was for P1 in the silver class. But the pass really wasn't done yet because he was still right on my bumper, and I know this is the section of track where he could potentially pass me back. Now, strategy-wise, was it smart for him to maybe throw a risky pass on me early in the race? Probably not. So, I may have been on a slightly different strategy than some of the other cars in terms of how aggressive I was being early in the race. But I used that knowledge to my advantage as well, and really tried to put as much time between them as I could, and make up for the fact that in qualifying I started a little bit further back than I wanted. So again, now putting a couple laps in, P1 has gone to pit lane. If you watch my hands here, starting to really struggle with understeer and then oversteer. And now I'm braking early to try and compensate for what's happening with the tires. And I missed the apex there by a full car length or more. So for me, it's again, I need to just take a deep breath, realize I'm leading the race. I've accomplished the goal. Now I need to save some tire. And I'm on my in lap at this point. I've got an Aston Martin right around the outside of me trying to pass me. One of the Aston Martins who pitted earlier and now had one of their faster drivers in towards the end had been kind of hassling me for the last lap and a half or so. And the Aston Martins and the Porsches we found this weekend were really nice to their tires. They had good pace early in the stint, but they also had good pace at the end of the stint. And so for me, I was fighting with him, even though technically he was, I think, like a lap or two down because he'd already taken his pit stop. On track position-wise, he was trying to get by me so that he could kind of set sail and unlock the pace that he had left in his tires, whereas I'm trying to keep him behind me to preserve the track position for my co-driver when she gets in so that she can stay in front of him when everything cycles through after we take our pit stop, which is about to happen here. So now that Aston, like I said, has been on my bumper for the last 2 laps, and he made a really aggressive move all over the curbs there, the previous corner. So I opened the door and said I'm going to stop fighting him for it. And you can see already how hooked up they are right there to the second part of the carousel. Putting power down pretty well. Now my in lap here, I see this BMW ahead of me. I realize he's coming to pit lane. I thought about trying to pass him on the entry of pit lane, but in the driver's meeting they said that was a bit of a no-no. So unfortunately I lost a lot of time here because we weren't supposed to slow down until right there. And so this other BMW cost me a few seconds on the way into pit lane there. But overall, really strong stint. Car was great. I was really proud of the fact that we were able to get back to the lead and go from P4 in class up to P1. I handed over the car to my co-driver Samantha in really good shape. So looking forward to the next time that we can get on track and get back to racing after this crazy pandemic times past us here. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this interesting, informative, maybe even learned something. I'm glad to share my experiences, and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks.